Welcome back to another episode of The Hit. My name is James Layton, CEO and founder of Anderson James. This is the podcast where every single week I bring you a leader from our sector to discuss some of the biggest challenges in UK housing today. Today I was delighted to be joined by Ryan Geldard, Director of Operations, and Jess Rose, Head of HR at M-AR Offsite. In the episode, we discuss at length their growth journey, how they've maximised their operational efficiency, how they've developed their people, some of the things that they've done around their recruitment process to attract talent to their organisation, even though it's remote. And we spoke about how you would go about scaling another factory in another location and whether you'd go with a talent-first approach. I hope you enjoy the episode, and if you do, I'd ask that you like and subscribe. Ryan, Jess, welcome to the podcast.
Hi.
How are you doing?
All right, I'm good, thank you. As I always like to start, if you just mind, give us an introduction to yourself. So I'll start with you, Ryan.
Yeah, sounds good. So my name's Ryan Geldard. I'm a director of a business called M-AR Offsite. And yeah, I've been in the business for around 6-7 years now. Come from a main contracting background, spent a year with a developer, and have spent the last few years with M-AR, helping M-AR scale its operation in the offsite world.
Amazing. And Jess?
Hi, I'm Jess. I was recruited at M-AR last year, so I've been here around 8 months. I'm the head of HR. So I've got about 12 years experience working within HR, but different industries. So I've worked within personal care, manufacturing, retail, and obviously now construction. But yeah, I'm enjoying being on board and with the M-AR team.
Amazing. And just for the benefit of the listeners, Ryan, just give us an introduction to your role, mate. What are you responsible for? What do you do?
So my role's expanded almost into every corner of the business. I'm probably a bit of a workaholic and do a little bit too much to be effective in everything. But in the same respect, I spend most of my time now at the front end of the business, supporting potential clients with what the business can do for them and find them solutions. Work quite heavily as well in the pre-construction parts of the business as well. And effectively, I look after our team of directors, reporting to our shareholders, and support our clients. My background, though, isn't in that. My background is in kind of operations and kind of site end. But over the last few years, I've kind of moved more towards the front end of the business and supporting the business at a more strategic level, a role that I actually really enjoy. But I think is probably only really possible by understanding the nuts and bolts of how things go together operationally. So I've got a broad remit, but I'm also supported by a great group and a great team of people around me to deliver out on that.
Amazing. And one thing that I wanted to just understand a little bit is around from a people perspective, Jess, what's the sort of helicopter view of M-AR today in terms of people and overhead?
Yeah, so at the moment we have 70 permanent employees that work for M-AR. With agency, we probably have about 100 to 120, depending on what work we have going on and how busy we get at certain times. And that's basically throughout different sites throughout the UK. So we have a manufacturing facility based in Hull, and we have a team of around 24 ops, and we flex with agency there, depending on the workload coming in and out of the factory. So we might have between 10 and 20 agency ops on the factory floor at any given time, week by week.
Okay, perfect. And some of the challenges, I know the business has grown quite considerably over the last 3 or 4 years. Ryan, can you just talk us through some of those growth periods and milestones and kind of where some of the challenges may have been and some of the successes have been for you in that role?
Yeah, absolutely. So kind of the history of the business is that it were effectively created 15 years ago, primarily as a hire business, delivering modular buildings for hire. And over time got itself into a manufacturing position where the shareholders and directors decided they were better to do the manufacturing themselves. And with that coming with factories, you've got to have enough work to be able to deliver that out. So over time, the business matured from a hire model into manufacturing, into sale of modular buildings. And I joined 5 years ago as the business was doing about £8 million in turnover. And now today, to our latest kind of financial year, we'll have done about 38, maybe even 40 million as the numbers kind of solidify around what we've done. So we've scaled up in kind of only a few short years into being quite going from a small kind of business over here to now a really medium-sized business and quite a major employer in our area. And that's through a combination of things, really. It's through different market sectors that we've moved into. As the modular sales started to develop, it was more education-based, doing schools, that kind of thing, working for main contractors. And we've really moved the business now into being, whilst we will still do schools and occasionally work for main contractors, we're a main contractor in our own right. So we're taking on projects where we do everything from the groundworks right through to the final completion, the manufacturing in between. We also build projects that are not just modular. We focus the business on being solution orientated, and whilst we've got a factory and we've got to fill it, we've got good clients who need something different, we'll do it. And we've pivoted in the last few years around different market sectors. So factories, it's really important that they've got continuity of workload that isn't always available just from one market sector. So we've made some quite strategic kind of R&D moves into different market sectors, not least the most high profile one out of those for us has been housing. If it's got a bed in it, we'll look to build it. And we've developed up our operational capabilities, our design capabilities around that. And that's got us building everything from bungalows, where we started, and small houses now to 20-storey towers in the middle of London. So that's been a massive transition over the last few years. And with that growth comes with the inevitable, scars and grey hairs. But the upshot for us really is that we've kind of, the big thing really has been attracting the right type of people to work with us. And that's not just internally, that's partners within the market, and it's also some of our key supply chain and consultants, and getting them really bought into what we're trying to deliver, because it's all right working for us, but it's got to work for them as well. And that's been a big challenge, which I think we've risen to quite well. Beyond that, then, it's just continuous change. How do you manage that? The economic climate is difficult at the moment, but only a year or two ago, it was the pandemic, and dealing with kind of those challenges. And whilst all those things have been a challenge, have also been quite good for us. It's sharpened us to become better, quicker. But look, with that amount of growth, what can start as a small crack can become a big void. And that's been the big thing for me and my the last few years has been minesweeping the business, working out which we need to deal with at any time. And I think that's probably why my role's gone as broad as it has, is because I've had to place myself where it's needed, and backfill with some really solid people in the roles behind me, of which we've got a really, really strong pre-construction and construction team now, and a really strong manufacturing team. And that's your hub really of operations, isn't it?
Yeah, amazing. And Jess, I was going to come to you because it sounds like you've been part of the biggest part of the growth, certainly from 18, 19 million to 38, 40. What's been some of the talent challenges and people challenges that you've faced? Because I understand through growing my own business that there's some scalability challenges when you try and get more people involved in the business. How have you sort of combated some of that? And I suppose what have been some of the key challenges you've faced?
Yeah, so I think within the business, as it's grown, one thing that we wanted to really preserve was our kind of culture. So there's a really strong positive culture here at M-AR. And as the business grows, naturally, the workforce can become slightly disconnected. So we've really invested in things like an internal intranet to keep the workforce connected, to celebrate success, good news. We've invested in social events, bringing the team together as we're becoming a bigger team. And we've kind of prioritised those things to make sure that we're all connected and we're sharing the same values, attitudes and behaviours that we want for that strong positive culture. I think recruitment obviously has been a challenge with the business growing so fast throughout that period. But equally, the staff that we've had to make sure that they're not getting burnt out, because as the business has naturally grown, those employees have had to wear many different hats. And we've had to ensure that, they're supported from us as a business, and that they're not getting burnt out with that, because we've got some really good top talent here. And honestly, some of the people that we have on board, they'd stay up all night working for us if we let them.
That's good, I suppose. I think the one thing that I've observed, and I'm sure you're both the same, is like the market conditions at the moment are making it more and more difficult to find the right sorts of people, especially skill sets. QSs, as we've all seen, are difficult from a white collar perspective. And finding the right people culture, that's a real challenge. What have you done in terms of scaling your processes to match that in terms of recruitment process, making sure you get the right people? How have you made sure that you've sort of made sure that it's consistent so you are getting the right cultural fits for your business, would you say?
Yeah, so what we did was last year in about November time, we refreshed our core values.
Wow.
And what we did was we made sure that these was embedded into everything that we do. So in terms of recruitment process, we'll basically discuss these values, we'll tell the M-AR story to the candidate before they've even gone to the interview, because we want to make sure that they're part of that journey and that story, and they're going to be sharing success with us. So, you know, when we recruit people, we want them to mean something to us. We want them to be a part of that story. They're not just a number. So we've implemented that, and we've made sure our core values are embedded into everything we do, recruitment adverts, throughout the interview process. We get them to come down to site to meet the team, see what we do, and things like that.
I think that's for me as well. I think that for me is where, Jess, you've been really great for us in the time since you joined us. You know, you follow through with it as well. So one thing that you've been really keen on, Jess, is like, it's all right saying all this, but like, how does it manifest? And things you've done, Jess, in terms of like pay it forward and your most recent kind of values awards.
Yeah, that's true.
It cements, doesn't it, with the team kind of, you know, we mean what we're saying here. And I think for us, James, over the last few years, because we've grown so much and the business is set up, you know, by founders who are a husband and wife team, it's been family oriented. As you kind of get up to that kind of, you know, dozens of people, and it does dilute, and you've got to find ways to keep tapping in with those values that actually are what made the business a success in the very early stages. And finding ways to do that and make that relevant to the business we are now has been important. It's somewhere you've spent a lot of time, Jess, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. I think I kind of agree with that, Ryan. Yeah, I think what we said was when we refresh these core values, we don't just want it to be a slide on the induction video, you know, or on a fancy mug. We actually want to live and breathe these values. So, you know, in our internal comms, we'll put a value in there, and we hold each other to account to those values, and we do actually live and breathe them every single day. We really prioritise that as a business.
Yeah, which is amazing. And I think the $1 million question is it culture or is it skill set? And for me, it always culture, like 9 times out of 10, it has to be, because I think as businesses scale, the challenge that they fall into is we need these skills right now. It doesn't matter what the person's like. And it never seems to work out that for me, never seems to work out. So how we make sure of that is, as you said, that process. But I think as companies scale, sometimes they can lose sight of culture and values and go skill set.
Do you know what, James? I think we have been guilty of that a little bit as well, being open and honest, that when you've got projects and you've got a skill set and a skills gap, you know, you go out with your lens of, I just need to fill those skills gaps. We're already overworking the people that we've currently got in the business. We need to grab at that. But it's interesting, really, that there's never been somebody who's come into the business where if they're not going to work out, it does show itself quickly. Yep. And I think one thing that we've had to try and become is a lot more, and this is where the values really works, is you can hold each other up to those standards and say, is this going to work long term? You know, because at the end of the day, I think one thing that's become really, really kind of noteworthy over the last few years is people are a lot more conscious about, am I enjoying work? Do I feel fulfilled by this work? Definitely. Do I enjoy working with these people? And I think the days of people being locked into a career for 30 years, 40 years that they just don't enjoy doing has kind of gone. So actually having those values and having the right people and reflecting back with them, actually we've had some people who've come into the business and in good faith all the way around, but have moved on because it's not for them. And the culture's not for them, and that's absolutely fine. You know, as long as we say we're employing people for the right reasons, for the right values, and we look to enrich everybody so that they leave a better professional when they do leave, whether that's a year or 2 years or hopefully 10, we're happy with that. As you say, finding those fits is the most important thing.
Yeah, and I also think that as the market gets tougher, we don't sell the opportunities fairly sometimes. So there is the other side of this fence, which is we sell all the good bits of the roles, but we don't tell the person the candid truth of there's going to be these difficulties. And I think the better we can do a job of being candid around the job briefs, the better we'll get in terms of a good fit and match for companies that we recruit for, definitely.
Absolutely. No, I tend to agree with that completely as well. It's hard to write that in a job description, but working in a business that is blue chip and has been around for 100 years and has processes for everything is an entirely different proposition to a high growth business. And people find themselves either really happy or really not in those types of environments. We've had people genuinely who've come from blue chip kind of worlds, stepped into our world, and the culture fit isn't right, the pace is different. Doesn't mean that they're bad or they're not brilliant, but they're just not the same. And we've had other people who've come up through our ranks that anytime you talk about process and procedures and you know, it's alien to them, and it's kind of it's an interesting one to find the balance of, and it does change. It does change quickly in a business like ours.
I agree. And how have you found, Jess, the pay challenges? Because I'm seeing the markets inflating daily at the moment. Still, even though the world of recruitment has got more tough and the market's toughened, I still think that the pay challenge is still very much front and centre. How have you combated that? What have you seen, and what's been your lived experience for the pair of you, really?
So I think with the pay challenges, what we aim to do as a business is be really open and transparent with our employees, on the basis that we build trust and understanding among them, so they understand our pressures and they understand the situation out there within the wider world. I think as long as we regularly make our employees aware that, you know, at a high level, we're always considering pay and inflation, and we have our employees at the forefront of our mind. And that's how we kind of build that trust and that relationship when we get the buy-in from the staff. Because, you know, in an ideal world, it would be great to give everybody an excessive pay increase. But, you know, we might not be always being in a position to do that as a business. So I think it's just about good communication throughout the business, having those regular check-ins with the staff, and also looking at what we can do as a business financially to support them as well. We've invested in things like, we have a financial advisor coming in for the employees. So we're doing some financial wellbeing sessions where a financial advisor will come in and speak to our employees in groups about pensions, mortgages, savings, and about how they can organise their finances to help them in their personal life. So we have invested in that as a business.
Which is unbelievable. And Ryan, like from your perspective, you've been in the construction industry a long time. You'll have seen the same things that I've seen. And I think the skills challenge has meant that people have progressed sometimes too quickly, and therefore the salary gets quite heavily inflated, and the expectation from the employers that they can deliver a role at a certain level. But what's your observation been of how quickly some of these salaries and careers are having to grow now in the marketplace?
I think the market always ultimately decides, doesn't it? Which, you know, the skill set and the experience and the roles are reflective of the kind of the amount that's needed to kind of pay. I think I hasten kind of caution on wanting to see people develop in the right way. Again, I sit here as somebody who has gone through a kind of fast track, and I think experience is the quality of the experience is the most important thing. So I use an example of, if somebody's been in the industry 20 years but has only ever built, you know, one type of product, have only ever been a house builder as an example, well then it might be 20 years experience, but it's not 20 years experience in building hospitals. And getting that breadth of experience is really important. I have some concerns. I think that there's definitely people in the marketplace who, because the market conditions have allowed it, have moved around a little bit and probably haven't gained that background knowledge. But I think as times inevitably change, we've worked through a good couple of recessions now. I think people have to take stock. I think they have to continue to work hard. Be really clear in their mind about what they do know and what they don't know. And I think the most important advice I give to people who are coming up and are tempted by moving for, you know, a little bit more responsibility, a little bit more money is, you know, when it comes down to it, have you got the mentorship and the experience around you to know that you're ready to take the step? Taking a step too soon and then, you know, getting that setback earlier in your career is not ideal. But also, I think people are a lot more resilient. They're a lot more able to find ways to learn quickly, particularly now with everything within your fingertips with the internet. You know, there's been times where I've been caught out. Finance is not my thing. There's been times where somebody's told me about EBITDAs and all this, and I'm quickly typing it up, going, "Oh yes, I
agree, Ryan."
Well. Yeah, that's kind of. But I think, as you say, it's hard to generalise. my concern would be, there's been a lot of people who moved around, not particularly a lot of experience. Getting that mentorship, getting that experience, understanding where you've got the gaps is really important, and knowing what your true market worth is, and having enough experience of how the cycles go to know, actually, I'm probably on the money now, but if the winds change, I've got to remember that actually, you know, I could get more, or where do I
really good advice, that. And I think, I mean, I'm sure you do this already, but I think we need to invest in the next generation of talent as well. I mean, what's your view on bringing through the next wave of talent and the next generation? I'll come to you first, Jess. What's your thoughts on kind of developing our own? Because I think that's a way that you can definitely solve the cultural challenge of getting the right cultural fit, because you can develop and blend that. But also, like, we're struggling as an industry for certain skills anyway. But what have you done around that so far, and what's your plans in the future?
Yeah, so what we're doing is we work with the university at the moment. We're looking at an intern within our health and safety department, but also we're building relationships with the university, because there's a lot of graduates there with some great skills and knowledge that we could potentially tap into. We're also looking at apprenticeships throughout the business. So like you say, growing your own, and trying to get young people interested and on board and taking them through apprenticeships. Because like you say, they'll learn the full kind of product life cycle within the business, and hopefully they can develop into some of our rising stars within the business. I also think with the next kind of wave of generation, I think if we look at ourselves as a business, we also need to change, because I think, you know, that next generation are quite outspoken with their views and their feelings and their opinions. And I think, you know, as a business, we need to make sure that if we're trying to attract that generation, that we give them the forum to express those views, and just be on board and part of the team, really.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that the sector, especially modern methods of construction, is the way to attract the next generation. It's innovative, it's new, it's carbon neutral, it can be good for sustainability. I'm seeing more and more graduates coming to the table and saying, look, it's not about money for me, it's about experience, it's about doing something for the planet. I think the motivations are changing in the next generation as well. What have you seen, Ryan? Because you've come through really quickly and you've done some great things in your career already, but what are you thinking about the next generation of talent coming through and how we develop them?
I'm really excited. I think that there's young people coming through now who've got a lot of the core skills by osmosis of, you know, living with an iPad, you know, and living with technology. And that's a bit that we struggle to train in. And it's almost like a core attribute you need in people, particularly in modern methods of construction. You know, there's a unicorn skill set as I see it, and I've put this on my fingers constantly, but, you know, digital awareness, you know, commercial awareness, manufacturing knowledge, construction knowledge, and contracting. You know, it's kind of, if you can get those bits together, and to boot that they are a team player and hard working, then that's kind of the skill set that we need. And I agree with you, James, in that the industry has a real opportunity to show itself and pick on some of the things that come through constantly when you get reports about apprentices and why people want to get into construction and maybe why they don't. A lot of the time you're talking about construction only is attractive to 50% of the demographic-ish, quite male-dominated still, albeit I think modern methods of construction gives us an opportunity to change that, and we're seeing that within our workforce. But I think also, you know, noisy, dusty, health and safety, those things have come through in reports for years and years, and modern methods of construction gives people the opportunity to see a way different to that. But one thing I've got to say is, for all the amazing seller modern methods of construction, we're all very good at talking about the last project and the great projects, and talking about very intangible things like better, cleaner, quicker, all this kind of stuff. If we really, really, really want to go this properly, we've got to hack at where those young people's attention is. You know, it's not sitting on LinkedIn. It's not sitting watching TV. It's not picking up the Guardian newspaper. We've got to go and get them from where their eyes are. And as Jess says, that's it.
TikTok.
Exactly.
It's Instagram, it's TikTok, and we've got to curate content that they can engage with and see what we do as an industry, because unless we can get people really excited and excited enough to want to come into our industry rather than maybe becoming an influencer or a professional footballer or whatever the latest kind of craze is, unless we can really start aligning that. And I think we do that so well as an industry, but for other things, we're into the right seams to talk about the benefits of modular and MMC and all that. But actually for talent, I think we've got more to do as an industry, really.
Yeah, and you mentioned it, but I agree. Like, I don't think we do enough to speak to the next generation on their platform. We're still doing career fairs and come to the college and speak to us and all. They're not there. Like, I did one at Derby College recently. There were 6 people there. I mean, it's like, we're not going to create much noise.
But you're only going to go because your mum and dad have told you.
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
You need to get, you're 16 now, or you need to be looking at, why not look into construction? And we've got to make it accessible. You know, we've got to make it, you know, people, as you've said, James, want to know that they're coming into an industry and wanting to make a difference. Yeah. Sustainability is a big agenda. You know, social rights and kind of inclusion is becoming a big agenda, and it's becoming expected because these are the things that are coming through in not only in popular culture but also in the kind of academic you know, spheres of which they're learning in the curriculum. But also, we've got to look at what young people want to do and what they want to engage in. We need to take inspiration from the areas of industry which are that are oversubscribed for places. You know, it sounds daft, but we shouldn't be looking at the young, you know, the generation coming through and say, you know, you shouldn't be interested in things like social media and writing content and being freelance and digital. You know, and working in Dubai. I mean, we've got to find ways. Yeah, but you know, all this is here. How do we, as an industry, find those people who want to have that lifestyle and find ways for them to input in?
Yeah.
We're always going to need people in factories. You know, we need to find a way to get those people who are not very interested in kind of academia, but like to work with their hands. They need to know there's a job for them in our industry, and we need to give the people who do want to work remotely under their own steam, have different values. We need to find ways to be able to integrate those within the industry. And actually, our industry is young enough and forward-thinking enough to accommodate that.
Yeah, I agree. I think one thing that is struggling now is, you know, with COVID and all the horrible things that happen within that, it's given us an opportunity to relook at how we operate. So from a remoteness perspective and all the challenges that come with that. But I've got a slightly different view on this. I don't know whether the next generation learn as much because they want to be remote. And I'm not so sure whether they're going to be able to learn through osmosis like we used to do on construction sites when I was growing up and certainly manufacturing places. How do we combat the remoteness challenge? Because if our senior people decide they want to work from home 5 days a week, we will never bring the next generation of talent through because it's much more difficult to do that remotely than it is in person. What's your view on that, Jess, and how are you combating the remote challenge at the moment?
So I think I can see your point, definitely, and I equally can see why, you know, remote working works for some people.
Yeah.
I think what we've recently discussed, myself and Ryan, is looking at co-working spaces or satellite offices in quite vibrant cultural towns or cities, so like Leeds, Manchester, London. So if we want to attract, like you say, talent, why don't we, you know, look at a co-working space in the centre of Leeds where people can collaborate? It's not too far for them to travel, and then they can also do some hybrid working, some remote working a couple of days a week. So they're still getting that kind of collaboration, but it's a different site. So I think making it more attractive in that way, as opposed to coming all the way up to Hull on the end of the motorway, would be a really nice thing, you know, in quite a quirky co-working office in the centre.
It's a great idea. It's a great idea.
Appealing to people. I mean, I'd go and work there.
Well, there you go, Jess. Yeah, but you're exactly right, though. I mean, for me, it's the attractiveness, isn't it? You know, is how can we make our workspaces more attractive for people to want to come in? You know, we talk about being, you know, where are you most productive? We use that phrase a lot with our staff, and you know, you're right. The kind of the interpersonal skills and the bonds that you build, and kind of the new ideas. There is something in that. It's hard to measure, but there is something in it. And I think the big thing for me, thinking about younger people and that is, you know, as leaders, one of the things that we've done in our business over the last few years is put a lot of pressure on a few good key senior staff. Yeah. And that has reduced their bandwidth to focusing on operation and doing the job in hand. And one of the things that Jess and I are working on significantly at the moment is how do we give those really good people the headspace to really start thinking about succession, because it's rewarding. You know, we all want to come. One of the big kind of benefits of moving into senior positions is having, you know, people who are less experienced in the career working alongside you and wanting to invest some time. It's when you talk to some of our staff, you know, the ones who have got junior staff working with them seem to be the most fulfilled and rewarded. And again, there's something in that about wanting to pass your knowledge on. And again, I worry that over the last few years, we've all become so kind of, no matter where you work, but you're isolated, you're talking into a camera all day, you're doing your reports, you're sending them off. We're missing out on some of those things. You know, we talk about the amount people have moved and attrition rates across industry. Is that because they're just not as connected as the ones were, that they don't have a chance to do those development activities? You know, there's a real thing about having an apprentice and having people who are coming along with you, because you feel an affinity to stay with them and develop them. And there's an affinity then from the apprentice or the trainee to stick with the kind of senior people and work under them and gain their loyalty and respect and confidence. And then that has multiplying effects for a business in terms of its commitment and its staff and people, as you said earlier, Jess, who know the business inside out and know what the business needs and where it's different. So, yeah, we've got some opportunities there for sure. But yeah, bringing on the next generation and giving an opportunity to the generations above, or the more experienced people, to feel the reward of bringing people into the business and developing them.
Yeah, definitely. And Jess, have you found the challenge? Obviously, we just mentioned Hull as a location. One thing that I think is common in MMC businesses is I can't remember having a conversation with any chief exec or leader within this sector that said that they're happy with where their first factory was located. Because generally, they don't set off with the foresight in mind of, I wonder if this is going to be easy to scale in this location. How have you found Hull, and how have you found the recruiting of certain roles in that location?
So location has been difficult. I would say more so recently. So that hence the reason me and Ryan are discussing other ideas of how we can get some top talent from across the country on board. I think the positive thing with us is, you know, when we're bringing people on board and we're wanting them to join M-AR, we want to show them the whole package. So even though we might be in a Hull and it may be a bit of a drive, we have hybrid working, we've got a flexible hours policy. So they will be able to remote work for 2 days a week. It will mean travelling to come into the office, but if we can sell to them us as a whole package and what we can offer in terms of our values, our benefits, the business itself, I think that's how we've kind of got people on board. So I think that's how we've done that. And I think when we're recruiting, we make sure we have like an initial Teams call and things like that. So people, you know, we can give them an overview so they're not committing to come all the way down here. So we have to try and sell it basically before we get them down to Hull.
Yeah, and look, I think having that flexibility, like when I said people should be in the office, it's more from that next generation of talent. I don't advocate people should be driving 2 hours a day to get to an office if they don't need to be there. I think we've got to be more flexible. That's been the real upside of COVID, I think. In terms of like, from your point of view, Ryan, if businesses are looking to expand, which they are, and MMC is becoming massive now, and I think it'll be a brilliant sector in the future, and is today. Is it a talent-first approach of how you scale an MMC business, do you think, if you're looking at locations to put a factory? Or what are the factors that businesses should consider if they're getting into this sector?
Yeah. So I think you've got to, effectively, if you're intending on building factories, you've got to build factories where there's a demographic which can support it. I mean, Hull, as much as Hull is a challenge for Jess and I in terms of staffing, that tends to be more the white collar, would you say, Jess?
Yeah, it's
so
collar.
A lot of the construction management, project management, quantity surveying, commercial professionals seem to be out of town. It's hard to kind of recruit within and obviously we have such a breadth over the UK for physical sites. Again, that's a challenge. But blue collar workers in the actual people that are putting the units together, less of a challenge, because there's quite a hub there of other modular businesses and other industries that complement. I think for me, understanding your demographics, but also factories aren't a short-term proposition, they're a long-term proposition. So one thing that I keep close tabs on when we're thinking about expansion is the political will in the area. is the manufacturing centres in decline? Is it in decline and that should be a bad thing for us? Or is it in decline that we could maybe borrow from a declining automotive industry in an area? And trying to build those links at that strategic level are important. And do you know what? That sounds really posh, does that? But that's just having conversations with, directors of regeneration in areas and economic output. And there's lots of different local authorities who have those roles and are keen to kind of talk to you about that. Because you can imagine the social political element of building factories is local jobs, local people, local training. You've got local homes built, to a high quality and sustainability target. It ticks so many political boxes. So there's more support than you might think, but getting that decision right is an almighty investment in time and money. And we've earmarked a few places that we think would work for us, if we were to decide to grow again. But it is such an important, and it's such an investment. You don't need to be far off the mark and get it wrong for it to be a real challenge. And as you say, I'd implore people to kind of not only look at square meters of factory space, because a shed's a shed.
Yeah.
Who's going to feed the shed? Who's going to do the work in the shed? And that's kind of how we see it. From the white collar brains perspective, as in what you're really looking for is hubs of talent, as Jess has said, where, at the moment we have our hub in our factory, but as he said, decoupling that over the next few years and having local vibrant centres full of the white collar staff where there's a deeper pool of talent, and then having factories that are in the areas maybe less city centre, more kind of industrial towns that already got that there. It's about picking and choosing what that is, but underlining all of it through technology. So providing that at the front end, you're getting the right opportunities, you're designing it in a way that the factory can understand whether that factory's on the doorstep, is in a different city in the UK, or is somewhere else in the world. As long as you've got those systems right, it should work. And I say it should work. We're in the process of doing it. I hope it works. That's where our chips are.
Yeah, and I think not necessarily can you pick the right thing, because if you pick the right place for a blue collar worker and where you're going to get like footfall that you need for factories, you're not necessarily always going to pick the right place for the one. So you are really struggling to make the right decision. What do we think the skills requirement for the future is going to be? I mean, is that going to change dramatically, do we think? Because obviously MMC incorporates manufacturing and construction. Again, if you'd have asked me 10 years ago, I didn't think that those two things would come together. But what do we think the skills for the future might be that we need, and the requirements for the future of talent?
Oh, okay. So I think attributes are almost easier than skills.
Okay,
so I think
let's go attributes.
Let's go with attributes for a second, because I'm a bit more kind of over here in this process. Right. Hard work's changed over the last few years. In my opinion, hard work is now about street smarts as it is just sitting at a desk for 40 hours a week. So we're looking for people who are productive and are finding new solutions to problems, because the modern methods of construction industry, we are, as you say, bringing forward and innovating on the basis that there's this industrial manufacturing system over here and there's this construction thing over here. We're going to bring it all together. So, people that are curious, the thinkers who are effective, they're not so curious that they never produce anything, but they're producing things and thinking, how can we better this? So, and critical thinking is going to be a skill set I think is going to come through. The interpersonal skills of being able to work in a team and bring that team together have never been more important, or are they going to become? That's going to be a key thing, particularly in the digital environment, where, as you say, where the human touch points are changing. How do we get people motivated to want to work with us? In terms of the physical skill sets, digital skills is going to be huge for everybody.
Yeah.
I've had it today. I'm sitting here, going through my emails, and I've had a CapEx request from our production manager, a chap called Andy Harrison, who is brilliant. And he's come to me asking for £4,000 for iPads for his shop floor, which on one level I go, amazing, and we get him through, on another level I'm like, £4,000 for iPads. It's that kind of thing. So the digital skills and marrying that up and making sure that across all the different people who are in the business, we've got that layer. We moved to a big system a couple of years ago for digital, and we still try to embed it. It takes time. It's easier when people understand it and they're native to it. And then the last thing really is that good old-fashioned construction skill. Modular's not going to get away and decouple itself entirely from being part of a construction eco. kind of chain. The reality is we're going to need foundations, people to dig holes and get muddy. We're going to need all those different things. We can do what we can in factories where it's controlled and closed, the roof overhead and lights on, and get all the digital stuff sorted. It means nothing if there isn't a person in the trench digging a hole to do a toilet pot connection. So we've got to think about that as well.
Yeah. And Jess, anything from you on that in terms of the skills, attributes, attitudes, anything that comes up for you in that sense?
Yeah, I think I agree majority of what Ryan said. I think problem solving, definitely. I think, in the world we live in at the minute where you've got an Alexa and you've got Google for an answer, I think, those problem solving and critical thinking skills are definitely important. Also kind of people that are willing to actively learn, that want to learn and develop, and obviously resilience. I think, resilience is a really important skill that we look for in people.
I also think self-accountability. I think that's lost in some of today's society, is just taking responsibility. It might not be your fault, but take accountability and fix it, as you said, with the problem solving. One thing I wanted to ask, and it's probably a bit controversial, but given the workforce is definitely changing, in my opinion, 100%. I think we're all agreed on that. And I think the social dialogue that's going on at the moment, how do we kind of make the world and our workforce more inclusive, but also try and navigate some of the social context that we're dealing with? I know a difficult subject, but there's a lot of the woke culture and all the other stuff that's going on at the moment. How do we navigate that? Because it's difficult, definitely. Who wants to pick that one up?
I'll go first if you want. You go, Jess. Okay, Jess. You go, Jess. Absolutely, you go first. Yeah.
Please.
I think within that, I think for construction, I personally think it's about education. So within the industry, I think we've got a bit of a stigma and a bit of a historical stereotype attached to us. And I think that's really not the case. And I think, as Ryan said earlier about, and yourself, James, about, modern methods of construction and what we actually do as a business and what roles we can offer and how we operate, it's a lot different to how I think people will perceive it to be. So I think we have to kind of get involved in the community, educating people, like you say, getting involved with TikTok or involved with schools, and just kind of, explaining the industry in more detail, and just equally saying there's a job here for everyone. We are an inclusive employer. We've not got this kind of, historical stigma attached to us of what people think's the construction industry. Yeah.
I think for me, as you said, I've kind of been quite specific on your point. I think you've kind of not got to know what you're dealing with. We've got to, one thing we take pride on and is keeping his ear close to the ground as to the way that culture and expectations are changing. And I think that is about being close to the noise of kind of where things are. I think, people caring more about how we are inclusive and how we can become sustainable, and noticing that a lot of people have a lot of energy and effort behind a lot of kind of social good, and social good for the right reasons is really important. And for us, mapping how we can continue to deliver out on our purpose, and giving people a channel for that energy and effort is going to be really, really important. It is getting tougher. I mean, the reality is that the scope, legislation is changing significantly often for the right reasons, to encapsulate more and more kind of groups, and that's absolutely great and understandable. But for us, managing people, you get a bulletin almost every day with things that are moving and changing, and we just want to be as responsive as we possibly can. As with all challenges at M-AR, all we've ever wanted to do is where other people run away from things, we lean into things. Business has grown over the last few years on its agility. When other people are kind of sitting back and saying, we're not sure whether that can be done, we find a way to do it. And we're approaching all those challenges. So, it's not something that I think is going to be moving a lot over the next few years, but for us, keeping on message and understanding where we are, focus on those values and our purpose, and staying agile and being willing to move and bring people in and give them something to direct energy into is going to be important for us.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's never been more difficult to be a leader of a business with all the changing landscape of all the things that are going on. But I think we've got to do our best and be brave in our decision making. If we get things wrong, we lean into it. I think sometimes I'm terrified to make a decision one way or another, not knowing whether or not where that's going to sit in today's world. That's a difficult thing. As we wrap up, one thing that I think's been really good, and you've been really honest and open, I just wanted to understand what you think the secret ingredient's been for growth. I mean, what have been some of the key things that have happened or you've done that you think that was a real silver bullet that changed our fortune and our direction?
I think for me, we've brought in some really good people. Yep. We've got. I do sit on a night nervous that we give some of our really important people too much. But I think we've built enough confidence and trust that they would come to us and say that. Now we're where we're at. So I think, really entrusting some key people to make decisions and have autonomy and give them build the business around them has been quite important. I think the fact that we've been really collaborative in the marketplace, like without sounding too daft, and it's hard to again pitch a business case for, but we've shared some of our IP. We've been forefront of sitting in different groups within the industry, pushing for the right answers. We've opened our doors for our factory and shown people what we do. That pays itself in dividends because you're building your network and you can refer people and support people. So that's been something that others have run from. The industry's been very insular. We're spending all this money, I've got to keep this IP to me. It's like, well, actually, if we share it a bit and the market grows, maybe that will help all of us, and that's worked for us. And kind of the last thing there goes back to a point I made just a few seconds earlier, which is agility. When on the week the pandemic hit and the phone rang from the government and it was, we need support for vaccination centres, we need products that we didn't even supply at the time. We need people who can help bring all this together quickly. We were the first out of bed. We were the last into bed. We powered through that, and it was exhausting with also managing and running the business. But it created that momentum and that opportunity for us that really got us interested in, we can really scale this business. We can get a second factory. We can increase what we're doing, because actually if we focus on just providing solutions the market needs, not getting too hung up about modular this or MMC that or building this or whatever this, focus on what clients need, and that will yield us the results. So some really key people we've invested into, and that's now growing, has been a real step change for us. Being agile in what we're doing has been really important as well. So across all those few things really is what I'd say.
Amazing. Anything from you, Jess, there in terms of your 8 to 10 months, just in terms of what some of the things that you've seen that are secret recipe type stuff and things that you've seen that you're like, this is really good from other businesses I've worked for?
I think at M-AR, I've already mentioned it, but it is purely that one team collaborative culture.
Love it.
I just think, it's like the heart of the business, and no matter where you go, people display those attitudes and those behaviours, and I really do think that is, a key kind of success of the business, but a key secret ingredient, definitely.
Amazing. Well, that's it. I mean, we could do another one. I think just wanted to say a massive thank you. I think you've been really open and leaned into some of the challenges as well as some of the successes. I think, tracking your career, Ryan, as well in terms of some of the social media stuff and the collaboration thing, I couldn't agree more. I think you're really putting yourselves out there at the moment in terms of what you're doing and how the industry needs to get better together. And actually, I think if we can all learn a little bit from each other, I think the industry's in a really good spot at the moment. But I just want to say a real thank you for coming on and appreciate your time.
Thank you, James. It's been great.
Yes.
Cheers.
Thank you for listening to another episode of The Hip. If you'd like to hear more from us, please be sure to follow us on your favourite podcast platform. We are also running a 30-minute clinic free of charge to any clients that want to recruit in a more inclusive way. For more information, please reach out to us on our website, andersonjames.com.